Chapter 28. The rocket shot out of the end of the launcher like a greyhound from its cage. The backblast filled the interior of the van with fumes, even though all the doors were open. Sparks flew from the rocket as it ignited and gained speed, racing towards the pub. The doors slammed shut a split second later, so Sean didn't get to see the explosion. It wasn't as dramatic as he had expected. A dull thud followed by a sort of thumping pop that made the van rock, then the immediate chorus of car alarms set off by the explosion. A moment later, the driver and Malcolm were back in. Sean toppled over as the driver pulled away, and over the noise of the engine he heard the first screams and shouts. No one said anything else. Sean didn't even stop to ask where they were when they pulled over, and Malcolm indicated with a jerk of his thumb that this was where he left them. Once he was out in the fresh air, he recognized that he was a 5-minute walk from the main gate. Malcolm silently handed him his phone through the window. As the van drove off, he dropped to his knees and threw up at the side of the road. When he got back to barracks, Sean had hoped for solitude, somewhere he could just collapse and make sense of everything. No such luck. He was in a block of single rooms that all opened into a common area. Ravi Mitra and Curtis West were there, watching a movie. Mitra looked up in alarm at Sean's appearance. "Shit! You look bad." Sean grunted and went into his room, wiped, not from exertion, from the battering his emotions and nerves had taken. Rich was right. He was trained to kill. He was a soldier. It was what he would be asked to do if necessary, and he would do it well. But what he'd just done had no connection to that. Launching a rocket at a pub on British soil. It was insane. It was unbelievable. There was no way such a thing could ever happen, except that it had, and he had done it. Sean wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to kick the living shit out of anything he could, just to let out his rage and confusion. He became aware of raised voices outside, fists knocking on doors. Then after a single cursory knock, his door flew open, and Sergeant Adams filled the frame. "Harker," he said. He jerked his head towards the common area. "Outside." He disappeared immediately, going from door to door to deliver the same message. Sean slowly got up and went out. The others from the platoon were filing out to join the ones already there, all obviously wondering what had happened. "This everyone?" Adams asked. "Right. There's been an attack on the Monty. Some kind of explosive. I'm just doing my rounds to check names." "Oh my God," Mitra exclaimed. Sean forced his dry mouth into action. "Was anyone hurt?" "Yes, a few." Sean closed his eyes and felt his guts clench. He wanted to hurl again. "All minor," the sergeant said distinctly. Sean opened his eyes again, not quite believing it. "The front bar that got taken out was closed for redecorating. Everyone was in the lounge bar at the back. Lucky, eh?" He was looking in Sean's direction, holding his gaze a fraction longer than necessary. Long enough for Sean to get it, and the others not to notice anything. "Minor injuries only, you know. The kind of thing we're so good at faking for our exercises. Sounds like a real catastrophe was averted." Suddenly Sean had to fight to hold it together. He was nowhere near as good at it as the sergeant. The gush of relief that ran through him was like cool water after a 20-mile march. Mitra had switched the TV to a news channel. It was still too soon for pictures, but the basic facts scrolled across the bottom of the screen as breaking news. They painted a grimmer picture than Adams was describing. Substantial damage. Number of casualties, unknown. Statement expected. Well, Sean thought, if MI5 were in control of the scene, it stood to reason that they would want to big up the damage as well. Let Rich think it had been a lot more successful than it was. "Oh, fucking hell," Mitra exclaimed. "Clark and then this? What's next?" Adams patted him on the shoulder. "Don't fuss yourself, Kamasutra. The world's a shit place, end of. They hit at us, it just makes us stronger. Right, lads?" But he looked at Sean again as he said it. "Right," Sean happily added his voice to the chorus of agreement. One by one, or talking together in outrage, the platoon dispersed back to their rooms. Adams half turned to go and then came back. He delved into his pocket. "Oh, Harker. I think you dropped this. Take more care, I'm not your nanny." And he handed over the phone. The spook's phone. Retrieved from the train. They must have tracked its signal. "Wow, thanks." Sean took it, slipped it into his pocket. "I've been looking for it everywhere." "Now get some kip," said the sergeant. "You look exhausted." And with that he was gone. Sean went back to his room. Adams was right. He was exhausted, and his relief at the news had simply added to his tiredness. It meant that all the adrenaline that had been keeping him going was no longer needed, so it could just drain away and leave him running on empty. He fell onto his bed, and his phone, his own phone, buzzed in his right pocket. It was a text from Heaton. "I owe you a drink. Pick you up Tuesday evening, 1900. Sean immediately wanted to be sick again. Trouble was, he had nothing to bring up, and he still had a job to do. He pulled out the spook's phone and called up the text menu.